Now that we're ready to play Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, it's a really great time to talk about the other elements of reading music on the guitar. As I said in the first part of reading music on the guitar, we do this a little bit differently in the lead guitar method. We avoid those mnemonic devices of Every Good Boy Does Fine and FACE for the spaces. We first focus on note recognition, which you've already done. You know how to recognize the pitch and the rhythmic value of a note. And then we talk about what we're going to talk about now, the way notes relate to each other on the staff. And there are two really important elements in how the notes relate to one another. There's the musical alphabet. You already have a sense, because we've played D, B, E, and G, that each note that we play has a letter of the alphabet assigned to it. You may also know that we use the first 7 letters of the alphabet, A through G. So we'll talk about the musical alphabet. We'll also talk about an important concept called stepwise motion, which is how notes move from one to the other in steps going up and down. And that's easier for me to show you on paper. So before we introduce those elements more formally, I need to introduce 2 new notes that we need to play Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, and that we need to connect all of the notes that you've learned so far into stepwise motion. So an A note and a C note. An A note is played with the 2nd finger in the 2nd fret of the 3rd string on the guitar. The open 3rd string is a G note, and when we press down on the 2nd fret, it becomes higher in pitch. It also goes higher in the musical alphabet and becomes an A note. 2nd finger, 2nd fret, 3rd string. The other new note is a C note. 1st finger in the 1st fret of the 2nd string. So the open B string is here, and when we press down on the 1st fret, that pitch also gets higher and becomes a C note. So we need those 2 notes to connect all the notes that we know so far. So the first concept I said I would talk about, the musical alphabet, is important to explain first. Now, if I were to ask you or any student to walk up to a blackboard or a whiteboard and write down the musical alphabet, your tendency would be to write A on top and B, C, D, E, F, G in descending order to the bottom. But that's not how the musical alphabet works. When we use the musical alphabet, A is on the bottom and B, C, D, E, F, G are on top of A. So we go from the bottom to the top, A on the bottom, G on the top. And that's a very common source of confusion with students, because we're telling them that, oh, just use the musical alphabet when you're looking at the staff. But they're probably thinking of it as A on top and G on the bottom, and it really confuses them. So that is the most important thing to point out first. And a lot of times when I'm writing these notes on a whiteboard, I'll write out the musical alphabet next to it with A on the bottom and G on the top. So that's one thing. And then stepwise motion is the idea that on a staff, as we move from one note, let's take this E for example, to the next note below, we're moving in steps. So this is an E, and you probably already know that this is a D. This is on a space, in a space. And this is on the line immediately below that space. And as you can see, there's no room to put a note anywhere in between those two. It goes immediately from one space to the line right below. So this is E and this is D. And then here's the space for C. Down one more line to B. Down another space to A. And then the musical alphabet flips around to G, back on a line again. So because we only have those 7 letters, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, once we get to G and we want to go higher, we repeat, and we have another A, which makes that A an octave higher. That's a concept we don't need to know now, but I want you to understand why we have multiple notes called the same letter name. So let's do this backwards because it's easier to understand. I'm going to start with the A note, so we can really see the musical alphabet at work. Here's A in a space. The next line up is B, the most familiar note to you, the very first note you learned. The next space up is C, A, B, C. The next line up is D, and the next space above that is E. So we have from A to E, 5 consecutive notes going up in stepwise motion. So here's A, 1 step up to B, another step up to C, another step up to D, and 1 more step up to E. And when we add G to that, going back down the musical alphabet, then we have 6 consecutive steps. You can also consider this playing part of a scale. Scales are always taking steps up or down this musical alphabet. So as you may already recognize, this is just the first line of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. So it's a great exercise to excerpt these measures and just practice each note 4 times going up and down so we get used to all the notes in our musical alphabet, all the notes in this stepwise motion pattern. It's really useful. And another thing that comes to mind when we're talking about stepwise motion is how we learn to read music in general. It's just like learning to read a language. When we first learn to read a language, if English is your first language, you maybe learned the word cat. And you didn't always recognize the word cat as a whole. You first saw C, A, and T, and when you put them together, you could say cat. It's just like we've learned with musical notes so far. You know how to recognize a B note, you know how to recognize a D note, an E note, and a G note, but now you can start to see patterns. For instance, you see that this is an A and this is an E, and we play every note in between those two, so rather than reading each note individually, you begin to notice the tendency, and you read in chunks rather than individual notes. And that's a sign when you're able to do that, that you're really becoming a good reader. So let's try this exercise together. You play along with me. We're going to start by playing each note 4 times, going down, and then back up, and then 3 times, and then 2 times. And once we play 2 times, we're already playing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. So now let's play this series of exercises together. I'll talk you through it as we play. And we're going to begin by starting with the E note and descending down to the G note, playing each note 4 times. Even though in Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, they're usually written twice, we're going to play each note 4 times. Here we go. 1, 2, ready, play. And E. Get ready for your 3rd finger on the D note next. D. And we stay on the same string for the C note with your 1st finger. That's a new note. Easy transition here, just lift for the open B string. And now to the A note on the G string with your 2nd finger and the open G string. And we'll pause and go back up. 1, 2, ready, G note. 2, 3, get ready for 2nd finger on the A note, same string. Now cross that string to the B string. Now we're on the 2nd string, and here comes 1st finger on the 1st fret for the C note. 3rd finger on D. It's an easy, old, familiar note. And now the open E string. Good. And now we're going to make it a little bit harder by keeping the same pulse, the same tempo, but we're only going to play each note 3 times. Here we go. Ready? Open E string. 1, 2, 3. E. Now D with your 3rd finger. Staying on that same string for C with your 1st finger. Open B string. A, and open G string. Let's go right back up. G 3 more times. 1, 2, 3. And now 2nd finger on A. To the B string. 1st finger for the C note. 3rd finger. And open E string. Good, and now even harder, we're only going to repeat each note 2 times. Here we go. 1, 2, E note. D. C. B. A. And G. Back up. G again. G. A. B, C, D, and E. And once you've done that, you're essentially playing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star already, which we'll do next.